Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to an all-new episode of Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Robry, and I'm glad to have you with us. If you're streaming us right here on YouTube or on any of our other social media platforms, such as Facebook, Instagram, wherever it may be, we just want to welcome you all in. Thank you so much for taking time to join us today. And as you can see, guys, we have a guest host to kick off Season 8 with us. My good buddy, Nate Verdin of Falling Tide TV. Nate, what's going on, brother?
What's going on, Jacob? Thank you for having me.
Man, as always, you becoming a regular. You and Roland Cortez right now, I think y'all fighting for the most appearances on the podcast, man. So, but I'm always glad to have you and Roland. Y'all bring a lot of knowledge to the duck hunting community and to the outdoor community as in a whole, man. So it's good to see you, brother. It's been a while since we talked. I know it's been kind of last season, we talked a few times. We were both kind of busy last year with the season unwinding the way it was. And I just wanted to kind of see, how did the season end for you guys, for your group over at Fallen Tide, man?
Well, the duck season in Louisiana was pretty rough, aside from the first, couple of weeks of the season. And I spent the back half of my season shooting divers, and then I went off and hunted in Kansas with Elliot with freelance. So, I mean,
yeah, that was a pretty awesome experience, man. Tell us a little bit about that experience. Kansas compared to Louisiana. I mean, how big of a difference are the two states, man, when it comes to waterfowl hunting?
Oh my gosh, man, night and day. They have it so good up there, man. And they don't like whenever out of state people hype up their state because they kind of try to keep it a secret. I've learned that, but I can't help it. Kansas has my heart, man. I love that place.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like anything else, Nate. If it's good, you want to keep it as quiet as possible for as long as you can. But nowadays with social media, you know better than anybody, man. With the videos that you put out there, it's tough to keep it a secret, especially for multiple seasons. You might get lucky one season, kind of keep a spot a secret. But in the off season, I find that a lot of guys do their research. They get on YouTube, they start watching all the videos. And before you know it, you have guys that are fans of your channel or whatever it may be. And they're out there. You end up seeing them in the field, man. They've done their research. They figure it out.
Yeah, there is no secrets whenever you put it out there. Those guys must be zooming in to your video, trying to see every little thing in the shot to be able to try to figure out where you are. And look, I respect it, man. I have to respect it. That takes a lot of time and effort to be that level of private investigator. But yeah, man. I mean, just about any public boat launch I go to these days, I mean, we get stopped. Hey, what's going on, Fallen Tide? I watch the channel, which is great. I mean, look, I'm blessed more than I deserve, with the viewership that we have. But at the same time, it's like, dang, I think I know why you here, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you get a certain amount of sincerity, I'm sure, from fans, and that's how it is, and that's what ultimately, you set out when you started Fallen Tide. We talked about this before, was to educate other hunters. It was to be able to produce your own show, do it the way that you want it to do. And then along with that comes fans. And along with that also comes a little bit of hate probably. And the negative side of the industry. But I think, we'll talk about, the big event that went on in Louisiana here over the last week or so. And man, it was such a cool event. I'll just say that up front because there was so much camaraderie, man, between everybody there. There was a lot of excitement going on in the waterfowl industry based here in Louisiana with the event that was going on. So that's a great thing. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But without switching gears too much, how did you get involved with Elliot over to get that hunt that y'all went on down there? Did you make one trip or did y'all go on multiple trips down there? Because I know you were talking, you had told me at the end of the year, you were trying to get back up there. Did you ever get a chance to do that?
Yes, I went up there twice. So I went in November. It would have been the second week of duck season here in Louisiana. I went up there and hunted with him. And then the last few days of the season up there, I went and made a hunt. And then got down here to make a hunt in the, I guess would have been the East Zone for the closing weekend. I was able to get down here to make that hunt as well. But yeah, I mean, as far as meeting Elliot, it was kind of random. So I've been keeping up with his channel, I would say, since I started watching duck hunting on YouTube. I mean, he was one of the first channels that I checked out. And then, he came across my channel because Jordan with Duck Gun Chronicles was a fan of my channel, as well as I am a fan of his channel too. And he brought me on his podcast, and Elliot was his co-host on the podcast. And so we had a good conversation. It was awesome. Loved chatting with those guys. It's so interesting to hear somebody's perspective who's not from Louisiana and be able to kind of educate them on some of our culture and that sort of thing. And I could see that they really appreciated our culture and just learning about it. And that made me excited to be able to talk to those guys again. And long story short, Elliot and Jake with Chasing Green came down to Bayou de Large to go fishing with a friend. They had some kind of mutual friend. And I saw that they were down here. And I was like, look, where are y'all at? I'd like to come over and introduce myself to you in person, you know? And man, I took off all the way down to Homa. And met up with those guys and hung out for the evening and just kind of established that connection. You know what I mean? And then me and Elliot just kind of stayed in touch. I went on his podcast and then I decided to just make the trip. He gave me the invite and I jumped on the road and went up there and we made the hunt that second week of duck season this past year. And we had an incredible teal hunt. I mean, the teal were I've never seen that many green wings just coming in constantly all morning long. We took our times. We took turns shooting, so it was like a really like slow paced, chill hunt. And we did end up getting our 2-man limit pretty easy. And after that, we went back, did the same thing the next day, and then I went back to Louisiana where there was no ducks. And I was like, man, I got to get back up there ASAP. And we made it happen again in January, and we had 2 of the most incredible mallard hunts I've ever been on in my life. I mean, one of them was my best hunt of my life, and that video is actually not out yet. So you guys will you guys will be getting that video probably a couple of days before the season starts this year.
There you go. Nate knows how to tease y'all guys. So, I mean, that's a perfect time to put it out. And, you know, we were talking about when I was going to kick off the new season of the podcast. And I said, man, after coming out of the event last week, I was fired up, man. I was ready to get going. And then you had hit me up and you're like, hey, we need to get together to do a podcast. I was like, you know what? We're going to kick it off episode 1, season 8 already, man, in the podcast. It's hard to believe it's already season 8 for us, but it seems like just yesterday we started doing this, but it's kind of evolved and it's you know, made a lot of friendships throughout this. And I said, you know what? It is a little early, but with a big event like we had last week, it got me fired up. I know a lot of people are fired up right now. So I said, why not? Let's kick it off. Let's get it going. And it's never too early to start talking waterfowl and you know, waterfowl hunting. So I'm glad we went ahead and we decided to do this at the time of year we're doing it, man. And it also, Nate, it also gives me a little bit of time to sit down with guys before the season kicks off, because what happens then is, you know, and you were doing your podcast, you know, I know you were scheduling some guests and having people on. It makes it tough during the season because everybody's coming and going, man. They own hunting trips. They all, you know, they're making hunts, and it's hard to nail down everybody to be able to get down and do a podcast unless maybe you with everybody, you know, on a hunt. So it's really a good time to kick it off. But you know, talking about Elliot and all those guys, that's pretty cool how you decided to make go up there and make it a point to introduce yourself to those guys. Because, man, at the end of the day, they're doing exactly what you're doing. Their love is what you love. And now, you know, you made a friend for life with those guys, or friend for life, I should say. And, man, y'all could trade hunts back and forth. Do they have any plans to come down to Louisiana and hunt down here, or what's the talk as far as this coming season with those guys? Or do they want to come back down to Louisiana, or are they saying, hey, man, we got it good up here, we're going to get you to come back?
So, yeah, that's the tough part. The tough part is the duck hunting is worlds better up there. And the ducks just don't migrate here like they used to. And so to ask them to come down here is like asking them to leave ducks to come down here to look at empty skies for the most part. And it's just – I hate even asking. Now Elliot does want to come back down here to do some fishing. So I think that's probably going to end up being the exchange is, look, let's get down here, you know, do some fishing, you know, just even if it's just come down here, do like a, you know, crab catch and cook type of a thing. I think that's something along the lines of what we're going to end up doing. But as far as them coming down here to duck hunt, I mean, until we start seeing numbers go on the rise again, I can't see that happening. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, like you said it perfect, man. You don't want to leave ducks to come down and look at empty skies. yeah, the food's great. Yeah, you could do some fishing, all that type of stuff. But during waterfowl season, your days are limited. So I'm sure they want to stay up there. You probably want to make a return trip up there. Are you planning on going back up there this year?
Yeah, I do. I plan on going back up there probably in January again.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So was there a big difference between January, that second trip you took, versus the first trip you took up there? Numbers of birds as far as that goes, different species. I know you said y'all killed mallards, the second trip, mainly teal the first time. What was the difference between those two trips as far as what you saw the migration doing?
Yeah, that's the interesting part about it, is they actually get a real migration up there. So you can kind of predict what's going to happen. Weather events really affect what happens over there. Early in the season, there was no ice. Everything was open, and the mallards were not forced to come down yet. They were still north. So that's why we had a bunch of green winged teal around us. But in January, everything was locked up. And I mean, this was shortly after that hard front that hit us, and they were still thawing out. So it was during the thaw that we hunted them in January, but things were still locked up, pretty locked up just about everywhere. We just got really lucky with, they had some area that was frozen that had a hard rain that rained on top of the ice. And so you had a lot of water standing on top of the ice. And so we were able to actually go out there. A lot of people didn't know that this area had water because everything else was locked up. This area got hit hard by a good rainstorm, and the water levels came up where we were. And so
gotcha.
You ended up having good feed and water there, where it was kind of unexpected. So we were over there hunting, and there was not a soul out there, man. Like, it was public land, and there wasn't a soul out there.
Man, watching the videos, when y'all posted the videos, I watched both Elliot's version of the video and I watched your version of the video. It blew my mind because I was like, where y'all were hunting public land, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, where are the people at? Were you shocked to see that? I'm assuming you were coming from Louisiana public land hunting to another state and not seeing anybody. You had to be a little shocked by that, huh?
Yeah, I was, but I'm more shocked at the idea I would say the demeanor of the people up there, and especially the people in charge. Because I didn't see big crowds anywhere. And from what I understand, it's a big hot button topic for them to limit pressure on public land up there. And they're kind of acting as if they have a major pressure problem on ducks. And I didn't see it. I mean, I went there 104 days and I did not see a pressure issue. Yeah, there were some other hunters in the area, but nobody trying to get on top of each other. I mean, I started imagining if there was an area like this in Louisiana with this many birds and this easy access, you wouldn't be able to find a spot to hunt.
No.
And so I'm thinking, man, either these people are really like ahead of the game, trying to like limit what they think is coming eventually, or if it's kind of like an effort to just get rid of non-resident hunters altogether. There seems to be a coordinated effort for it up there,
man,
which is kind of disappointing.
That's an interesting point you bring up there, Nate, because it seems to be that some states are kind of, I don't want to say shying away hunters from out of state, but I think places like Arkansas, Oklahoma, some of those places that got really good duck hunting over the last probably say 5 to 7 years, it does seem like they're kind of making efforts to maybe say, hey, let's keep this quiet for as long as we can, without just exploiting it and without ruining it possibly down the road by bringing in tons of new hunters to the state. Now, on the flip side of that, it brings in revenue for them, the local towns that these places are, the guide services, all that type of stuff. It's probably a good thing. But in the end, how long can it last? That's my question, Yeah, we may make some money for a couple of years or maybe even, 10 years, a decade or so. But then what happens when it starts falling off at that point because of the amount of people coming? That's something that they got to consider, being out, holding on to those resources the best they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just my thoughts.
I don't know. I don't know if they just think they have an unlimited supply of money or something, or if they don't really. If people in charge, may have a vested interest in some of these hunting areas. You know what I mean? The people in charge, they may just not want people pressuring the areas that they personally hunt, not thinking about the long-term repercussions of trying to diminish a population of hunters. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Well, as far as the area y'all were hunting, and we'll kind of wrap it up right here, but as far as comparing it to Louisiana once again, because guys that are from Louisiana, that's hunted Louisiana their whole life, they're interested to know about these other areas. Of course, when they see videos like you put out and like Elliot put out, and all these guys up north now with social media that are putting videos out, how different was the terrain as far as being public land? Did y'all discuss any kind of management, how they manage it, other than trying to keep the pressure down? As far as down here we got the word I'm trying to think of, I'm sorry, is invasive species such as grasses, the hyacinths, the salvania, all that type of stuff. Do they have problems with any of that type of stuff up there where you work?
No, not at all.
Is it because it's controlled by the temperatures, the cold temperatures up there?
I would imagine that has mostly, that's mostly the reason why, probably because it gets so cold up there to freeze all of that out. I mean, it was just natural grasses, seed grasses that was grown out there, and water comes out. During the summer months, it tends to be lower over there. Well, I don't want to say too much, just because of these areas are known by people. But whenever the water table drops during the summer months, you have a lot of seed grass that grows, and then in the wintertime, that water level will come up. And you'll have a lot of those seed grasses will be flooded. So,
gotcha.
that's kind of the habitat, where we were. But no, I didn't see any invasive species. And if they were invasive, they didn't seem to be affecting anything. I mean, there was feed everywhere. So
yeah. They just have the food sources, the perfect environment for those birds to hold. So Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad you got to make that trip. I know that's something that you were trying to do, and I'm glad y'all lined it up. So, but besides that trip, those trips that you made last year, was that pretty much the highlights of your season? Let's talk a little bit about Louisiana, man. How'd your season go as a whole here in Louisiana? Because a lot of people probably want to know your take on how last season was.
So early in the season, I saw a significant amount of birds. I mean, it was as good as I've seen it in the areas that I like to hunt. Aside from my actual lease that I have out in the salt marsh, that they really didn't have anything out there. We went out there just for fun opening weekend, and just it was hot, and we said, you know what, let's just come out here and make a hunt. I don't know what we're gonna kill, and we ended up having a pretty cool hunt. I wouldn't say it was very eventful, but I mean, we killed a pair of pintails and I shot a big old snow goose, which is pretty cool.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. He's pretty. I'm gonna get him mounted.
That's cool. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, but yeah, we went out and hunted some more private land the next weekend whenever I got back from Kansas, and they still had a good bit of birds down. But then after that, it kind of dried up. I don't know what happened. Birds kind of left. They isolated themselves. I'm not quite sure what happened, but we didn't have significant numbers, at least that I saw in the areas that I like to hunt. And then we started to see a lot of those bluebills, the dogrees, coming in, and I started hunting those because the canvas backs were just like nowhere to be found in the areas that I hunt. So I just kept hunting those. Every now and again, I would go off and try to, get on a group of teal that I saw, bait up somewhere, and I try to go set up on them. But I really didn't see any significant amount of grays or widgeons or anything like that. Now, whenever the freeze happened, we did have a pretty good push of mallards that came down. They were very temporary. They didn't stay, but they did push down, and got a chance to go shoot a couple of those. I didn't post those videos just because of the places that I was. I didn't want people wouldn't know where I was, and I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I didn't want to expose that. Yeah, some stuff I kind of got to keep on the DL, but we shot a few mallards, me and a couple of buddies.
That's good, man. It's good to see. It's good if you could get we always talked about that. You don't get the numbers, obviously, we used to get on mallards specifically, but if you could get a couple of seasons, you got to be happy nowadays with that, especially down in South Louisiana, So,
yeah,
it's funny because I had Kobe Fitch on last season with us with Cajun Country Waterfowl, and Kobe's over towards the rice, the rice side, western side of the state, rice fields. And he was telling me, he says, man, they seeing more mallards now than they probably ever saw in those areas years ago. And he caught me off guard. I kind of sat back and I said, really? And he said, yeah. He says we actually harvest mallard. Now, he's a big goose hunter. That's really what he's chasing, snows and specks, And but he told me, he said, we're killing more mallards on the western side of the state than we have in years. And that I found that kind of interesting, you know, because down here on this side where we are, man, you just don't see them like we used to. And, you know, that's well noted and everybody kind of agrees with that, you know.
That's
So,
interesting.
yeah, if you could get a couple down here, it's awesome. You know, where our lease is in the Chaffalot Basin, or our camp is, it used to be a lot of mallards in the woods, and we still get them. We do get some, but you know, we don't get them like we used to, of course. And last year for us, our situation was we didn't have water, man. Anywhere in the woods pretty much didn't have any kind of water source last year. And you know, me and Jackson, we tried to force it at the end of the season. We found one little area that was holding some water in the timber. And I kept telling them, I was like, man, they're going to show up. They're going to show up because we got water here. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, you know, we got a little bit of water. And if they hit us with the right weather, we're going to get some birds. And, man, it never really happened for us. We had the one day that I couldn't hunt where I was working and they had a front push through. It got real cold when you talked about the freeze. I had a friend of mine that I hunt with, and they killed some mallards and some gads in the woods on that particular day. And then they just were gone, man. That's just it. Like you mentioned a while ago, you had them for a bit and then they moved out immediately. This was literally one day because we went back the next 2 days after that hunt and we never saw a single, you know, gadwall or mallard. So
yeah,
it's funny how that works, man.
Yeah, it's tough whenever you were talking about low water. I mean, that was the main issue with this past season was just, you know, low water and saltwater intrusion. They go together. And, you know, a lot of the areas, these big areas of brackish marsh that usually have good, you know, feed grass, something for them to be able to eat. That just didn't exist last year like it usually does. I mean, you had your areas that had grass, don't get me wrong, but the big majority of the areas that would hold birds all season long couldn't because they didn't have any feed. So when you don't have that kind of holding power, you just don't have ducks in your area. And so when you're talking about one little small pothole in the trees, you just don't have the numbers in the area already. It's hard to sit there and hunt that spot and then imagine where the duck's going to fly from. You know, like where are they going to come from? And they, like you said, you had to wait for some kind of a freeze to happen to make them come down here. And yeah, theoretically, if you got the only water around, you know, you're going to have the birds. But unfortunately, we just, you know, it like you said, it doesn't fall on the right days sometimes and that sort of thing. But yeah, man, I'm excited about this season just because the water is up a little bit more. We
got a lot more water this year, Nate. If we hold on to the water that we have, we don't hit no major droughts, you know, which we close now. We're in the home stretch. Teal season starts up next month, man. I think teal season, if you got teal spots to hunt, I think it could be fire this coming season because of the water, the food source. You know, we didn't have any major storms over the last couple of years. I think a lot of that drought last year where there was no water, a lot of that vegetation, once it started raining again, it shot up, you know, back. They got feed now, it looks like. I think it could be fire, man, you know, for teal. Now, you know, you hunted teal last year. I know you made a couple of hunts last year. Fill everybody in that may have not seen the videos. What you did, what did y'all do for teal season with Fallen Tide last year? Where did you head over to and hunt without giving up the juice, you know?
I went out west, hunted with my buddy Brandon Phillips on opening day. They didn't have a lot of water. They just had a little bit of water. And again, they just didn't have enough water in the southwestern Louisiana region to hold large numbers of birds. And so there was just a couple here, a couple there, and they were isolated to a couple of little spots. The next day after that, I went and hunted with Mr. Damon Abear, with a friend of his. And we went on his farm, and kind of a similar story. Now, they had more controlled water, but again, you can control all the water you want on your small piece of property. But if there's not water all over in the region to hold large numbers of birds, I mean, you're not going to see large numbers of birds. It can't support large numbers of birds in the entire region. So, yeah, I mean, if you got the only water in the area, you'll probably have the only couple hundred birds in the area. But at the end of the day, that's nothing but a couple hundred birds.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You know, the first split, you know, I've had people ask me over the last couple of years, they'll say, hey, like you said, they'll listen to the podcast and then they'll see us and they ask questions, you know, or see a video and they stop us and ask a question. It's a lot of people that's getting into waterfowl, you know, that tend to ask those questions. And I had a guy, and I want your opinion on this. I have a pretty good idea. I know what the answer is, but we were talking about saltwater marsh specifically, and you and I have a good bit of history in the saltwater marsh, the way we hunt down here. He asked me, he says, man, he said, when's the best time? First split, second split, end of the year with saltwater marsh. And I told him, I said, what I've always seen is that it always starts out hot. It tends to start out hot in the saltwater marshes, you know. You got a lot of birds early on, and then it seems like it just kind of slowly tails off in the marshes, and then it ends up becoming really slow towards the end and kind of hard, to get those numbers that you want to get. But I told him, I said, really, I think that first half of the season, if you hunt in saltwater marsh and you're going to spend time there, that's probably where you want to be, is in the saltwater marshes of Southeast Louisiana for the early part of the season. What's your take on that, Nate? What do you see from what you've seen over the years?
I think certain salt marshes, I would agree with you on that. And I think, we used to have a big piece of property that was down in Terrebonne Parish, that was down on the coast all the way down there. And that was a late season area. It was a complete opposite. So those birds were a little bit further north, up towards like the Bayou Black area, the upper Atchafalaya, up in that area. And as the season went on, those birds were going way kind of like out in the wax and the Atchafalaya, and they were getting way on the outskirts, and they were just kind of rafting up out there. And, we would get a lot of that overflow. So late in the season, we had a lot more birds. I mean, it would be times 1,000. Like you'd have, yeah. I mean, it would be, you'd go, first split, you'd go out there hunting. I mean, you might see a couple hundred birds, and then you go back late season. I mean, you're seeing hundreds of thousands of birds. That's how it used to be down there. Now, I would say other salt marshes, we got public land salt marshes and things like that are down here in Southeast Louisiana, that I would agree with you. I've had better success in the November, time frame. Whereas late in the season, I mean, those birds are just really heavily pressured, and they just get really difficult to hunt,
Yeah, and that's a good point, because pretty much my experience is going to be on public land, marshes. So that's when I told him, I said, I see the majority of birds early on. That makes sense. It goes hand in hand with the pressure, obviously, on these public pieces of land. So I think for where I hunt at, specifically the areas that we hunt, being public, that's the tendency, and that's kind of how it tends to work for the most part. Now, like you mentioned, if you have a lease where you're not getting all that pressure on it, you hunted it maybe once or twice a week. Nobody else is hunting it during the week, hopefully, and you may be able to hold on to those birds probably till the end of the season, So that's a good point. So anybody who's considering that, if you're looking at least what Nate said, that makes a lot of sense there. You may hold a lot of those birds later in the year and be able to, have a steady flow of birds throughout the whole season. So where those of you who are, public land hunting, it's going to be the majority of the action is going to come early in the season from our experience of what I've seen, So I always thought that was a good question. And that's, there's a lot of guys that are trying to make that decision, Nate, on, hey, do I get into a lease and I pony up the money, I spend the money, or do I take my chances on public land? So, in Louisiana, and that's a good question I'd like to ask you. In Louisiana, if you that guy in that situation, what's your thoughts on a lease versus hunting public land? If you, and I know that's an open-ended question, so let me kind of, let's downsize that question a little bit. If you a college guy, or a guy who's coming out of college maybe, or coming out of high school, getting his first job, probably don't have a ton of money. You might have enough money to swing it for waterfowl season, but you may, it's going to be one of those close calls. Do you spend that money? What advice would you give somebody in that situation in Louisiana specifically?
Well, the answer to public land or private land is yes. That's the answer. So, I mean, I'm sorry, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but it is the answer. So I would suggest to somebody who's, doesn't have a lot of money, that sort of thing, just life situation, network, find people that have some private land, where you at least have some access to that, get in on a couple of private land hunts, each year. But look, public land in Louisiana, whenever we have ducks down here, it does have a lot to offer. So don't sleep on public land now.
Yeah.
And I haven't noticed it being that much better. Like the private land just hasn't been that much better than the public land these
And that's
days.
kind of what I was getting at, I guess. My point was, do you see a huge advantage on one? Of course, it depends on the spot. We know that. You know, some guys are going to be there with leases that are just loaded with birds year after year, and they sitting here listening to this and saying, hell yeah, there's a difference, you know. But, you know, we're talking about maybe Southeast Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana. You're looking at maybe leasing a spot down in the marshes, that type of stuff. Have you really seen that big difference in paying for a spot versus the public land offerings that we got?
Well, I'm not into paying big money for a lease or big money for a spot, you know, that sort of thing. I won't. I'll spend, you know, a few $100 or something like that, like maybe each year on private land spots. I'm not into spending thousands and thousands of dollars for a blind, you know, splitting $8,000 with three buddies, you know, that sort of thing. I can't see myself doing that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen the returns. You know, I would say I've seen, the only advantage that I really see to private land hunting is you're going to get your spot. You're going to get the spot that you're trying to get to every single time, and nobody can tell you otherwise.
Yeah, it's a luxury. You don't have to wake up at 2, 3 in the morning to get to a spot. You know, you have that luxury of waking up, you know, maybe an hour before daylight and getting out there and setting up. Maybe you already got decoys set up. So yeah, from a luxury standpoint, it's definitely has an advantage being on your own lease. You know.
Yeah, I mean, and look, you have certain areas that like we lease a certain area where it's all private all the way around it too. So it's not even like it's close to public land. So the birds act a little bit different. I will say that. And that does help. You know, you can typically get those birds to decoy a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely true when you have the least amount of pressure on them for sure. Well, man, this year we were talking about heading into a new duck season, Nate. And I know you and I, before we hopped on, we were talking about how we're excited, we're ready to get rolling. And, man, we had a big event here in Louisiana over the last week and a half. And they had the National Delta Waterfowl Convention held here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, down at the River Center, or the Raising Cane's River Center. And I know that I had hit you up through text, and I said, hey, are you going to make a trip down there? And you said, yeah, I'm going Saturday. And I couldn't get there till Sunday. But, man, what an event, dude. I mean, for Louisiana, in my opinion, to get that event, that was huge for our state, man. That was huge for waterfowl hunters. It was huge for the economy. And probably one of the best waterfowl events, quote unquote, that I've ever been to. You know, it was ran really well. And we'll delve into it a little bit more, but what's your thoughts on it, man? How was your trip when you went out there? You went out on Saturday? Did you end up going Saturday like you told me?
Yeah, I went out there Saturday. Yep. It was
What were your
nice.
thoughts on it, man? What did you I mean, first of all, how important is it for Louisiana to get an event like that here?
Well, it's obviously a big deal. You know, it's you're bringing that revenue to Louisiana, which is a big deal. You know what I mean? And you're also, you know, you're bringing like-minded Louisiana people together. And I'm always really big on community, and then the networking, being able to get in there and talk to different people that are in the industry face to face. I think was a really big deal for us creators to be able to do. But it was nice for me. I thought that the event was very well put together. I thought that, you know, they had seminars pretty much everywhere you were going. There was someone talking. There was a duck calling competition. I mean, I was able to face to face meet all kind of different guys from. I mean, we talked to the Duck Camp Dinners crew. I mean, I got the hat there supporting. I mean, those guys are the gold standard of Louisiana content creators.
Man, giving a shout out to them, not to cut you off, but man, how big has that show been for Louisiana, man? You're not only talking, you know, from an outdoorsman standpoint, but from a culinary standpoint, a culture standpoint, man. That's probably, and I'm not just blowing smoke, that's probably one of my favorite shows to watch right now on YouTube, you know. And those guys, man, just like you and me, just like average Joe guys that love doing what they do, love doing what we like to do here in Louisiana. And man, very easy to talk to. I had never met him personally. I made an effort to go up to him and talk to him in the show, shake hands with him. I did an interview with those guys, and just some awesome guys, man. And what you see on the show is what you get in person with those guys. Because I'll be honest with you, there's some people I've met in the industry and just throughout the fishing industry, the marine industry, stuff that I do as a profession, that they say you don't always want to meet your heroes. And sometimes, Nate, that's the truth, man. You don't want to. You meet people and then you realize that, hey, it's not what I thought they were on what I saw on TV, you know. But with these guys, man, the Duck Camp Dinners crew, Chef and all the rest of the guys, they were cool, man. I thought they were cool as shit, you know, to hang out with. So, I enjoyed that time with them, man.
Yeah, that was awesome. I like those guys, like you said, they're just down to earth guys, and like I said, I think they do Louisiana outdoor content creating better than anybody else. And then it's just the epitome of what we have to offer in Louisiana, and I just really appreciate what those guys bring to the table.
I told Chef that I met him. I said, man, look, I appreciate what y'all do just for the state, because I meant that sincerely, man. Mm-hmm. Whenever, you know, a lot of people, I think that they feel like us as all content creators, they probably watch from the outside, the ones that aren't involved in it, whether it's podcasting or videos and all that type of stuff. And you would think, okay, well, there's probably a lot of saturation in that area, you know, so these guys are competitive, you know. Mm-hmm. And I really think it's a great group of people that come together. When we actually get everybody together, like at an event like we had, man, you bounce ideas off of everybody, you network with them, you get to talk to them, you get to meet them, kind of know what's going on. And really, what I find out the most important thing is everybody's kind of pulling for everybody, Nate. Like, you know, they want you at Fallen Tide TV to do well. You want them to do well. I want you to do well. You know, that whole, if you're in this for the competitive aspect of it or the jealousy aspect of it, you're probably in it for the wrong reason, in my opinion, you know? And that's the one thing, man, that's how I got to know you. You know, when you started Fallen Tide and I started the podcast with us, we reached out, you know, and said, hey, let's do this together. That same thing you were talking about with Elliot and these guys, you're broadening your horizons. You're going out of state now, you know? So it's a cool thing, man. And that's the best part. It ain't for the money for me, because Lord knows I ain't making a living off of it. I'd love to, but I'm not making a living off of it.
Right.
But it's more about the friendships, the networking, that type of stuff for me. And an event like we had down at the River Center, man, with this convention, that's what I was happy to see, man. People just willing to share information. You know, they popular, they so-called celebrities in the industry now, but they were sitting there talking to us like we're talking right now with everybody, you know. Mm-hmm. So that was cool to see. I was really happy to see that, you know.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, I haven't caught the vibe from them that it's anything other than love. And I mean, that's how I feel. I feel the same way. I want everybody to eat. You know, I'm not competing against anybody, man. We're all colleagues. We're all trying to do the same thing. And if one of us makes it, we all make it. That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
And that's a good point. So, well, you mentioned Duck Camp Dinners. What else did you see at the show that you like, man, that you maybe talked to? Any body that you were starstruck by whenever you were talking? You don't come off as a guy who gets starstruck too easy. But was there anybody that you kind of fanboyed out on or anything like that at the show?
It was pretty cool meeting Justin Martin.
He wasn't there the day we went on Sunday from Duck Commander.
Yeah, he was judging the duck calling competition, and I kind of caught him when he was just passing through. I said, Martin, what's up? You know, I talked to him, and I said, what are you doing? You calling or you judging? He said, I'm judging. He said, the only person that can judge me is a duck.
That's a good point.
I said, I feel that. Yeah, no, that was pretty cool.
Judge there. Yeah, those guys, they might have had some guys there on Saturday that obviously wasn't there on Sunday, but I didn't get to see him. I know Jackson was excited. He wanted to talk to Martin too. He's like, man, Martin's there. I want to meet him, you know, and talk. He loves watching this stuff, you know. Yeah. And we still fans of all the Duck Commander stuff, man. So, you know, we like watching all that. But that's cool that you got to meet him at least. But what else did you see at the show, man? That kind of impressed you? Was there any kind of products that you saw? Any companies you ran into that impressed you that you want to reference or maybe mention?
That's tough. I mean, I saw Dale Bordelon. I love Dale. Dale was there. He was right when you walked in.
Yeah, we talked to Mr. Dale. Hey, you know what surprises people about Mr. Dale? And probably the same thing, you may agree with this, is how big of a son of a bitch he is when you meet him in person.
Yeah.
Dude, That dude's when you say the Bayou Beast, I think they call him the Bayou Beast because of the size of Mr. Dale.
Yeah,
That
he looks like he could go play tight end. He could go play NFL tight end right now. Just throw him out there.
I'm telling you, man. Jackson looked at me and he's like, we walked away from him. We went up to him, talked to him for a while. And Jackson looks at me, him and his bud, and they're like, he says, Mr. Dale's way bigger than I thought he was. He said, he's big. He said his words were, he's jacked, Dad. He said, he's jacked. I said, I hear you. I said, he is for his age. So, Mr. Dale, if you're watching this, man, we're giving you some love right here because you're in great shape. All that trucking through the swamps and everything, it's kept you in good shape over the years.
Yeah. I love Mr. Dale, man. I would say a gem in Louisiana.
An absolute icon. He's the Wikipedia of history in Louisiana. From a waterfowl standpoint, just a history standpoint.
We're very lucky. We're very lucky to have Dale Bordelon. This state is very lucky to have him.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think everybody's starting to realize that now has gotten to know him now. So I actually had him and Mr. Warren Coco from Go Devil together. And we were all talking, and I know Mr. Warren personally pretty well. I'm friends with Lance's son, and we're blessed. We get to go down to their place and hunt usually once or twice during the season. But hey, put the hunting to the side, just the stories that he could tell, and the stuff that he could, the knowledge that he has from the history of Louisiana waterfowl hunting. So all the old stories about Maurepas Swamp and all these areas, Venice, when it was back in the heyday, all this type of stuff, man, it's absolutely, once again, like you said, we're blessed. We're very lucky to have these icons in the industry, I guess you could say, right here in Louisiana, So when you get those two guys together, Nate, and you get to hear them going back and forth and you're just in the middle listening, I don't even talk, man, and I talk a lot. I just sit there and I listen to the stories,
Yeah, I'd like to meet Mr. Warren. I haven't met him yet.
We'll have to get together and we'll introduce you, man. We'll get all together at some point and we'll introduce you to him. He's a good guy, man. They really, really good people. So doing what they do, man. Yeah,
they seem like it. Anybody who's a friend of Dale is a friend of mine. So that's
right. There you go. And have you got a chance to go up to Mr. Dale's? Have you been to his place yet?
Yeah, I went up there. I started filming a documentary that's not out yet. It's this documentary I was filming. It started off as something very small, a small vision, and now it's my vision for it is so high now. Okay. That I don't have the resources available to do what I want to do yet, but we're gonna get there. So I can talk to you about that off air if you want to.
Man.
At some point.
And I know you had mentioned something to me about a documentary. You had an idea you wanted to do. So I'm sure that's going to be awesome, man. And once you get it complete, I'm pretty sure that'll be something to see for everybody to see, So
yeah, that's for later on though. That's like my lifetime project, I would say. Like that.
Well, you got to have a goal, man. And that's why you're talking about goals and you're talking about that. As far as this year for Fall and Tide, man, what's on the agenda for Fall and Tide? Do we have any new announcements coming for this season for the viewers? Is the podcast going on? Are you still doing the podcast? What can people kind of expect this year from Fall and Tide?
As far as what to expect, hopefully we can expect a lot of ducks to get shot. That's what I'm hoping for. That would be ideal. And then as far as the podcast goes, right now my life is just not set up for a podcast. It's just
time consuming.
It's time consuming. It's just, man, my house is so noisy with a 3-year-old running around all the time. We're actually in between homes right now. We're about to start building our new home at some point.
Okay.
But we're gonna have a podcast room in the house that whenever we go. So we're gonna get there, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah. Hey man, that's understandable.
There's so much. Let me be clear too. I will still do a podcast here and there. Until then,
keep it going.
I just got to get the right guest. I'm not interested in doing the weekly podcast as of right now. It's just not set up. My life is just not set up for it. It's too much. It's just too much.
And I've been the same way, man. I said, hey, I don't want to make it a job to where it's not fun anymore. I want to do it at my convenience. I want to space it. If I want to take 2 weeks off, I'll take 2 weeks off, and then I'll do another one, And I don't want to make it where it becomes, hey, I got to do this. It becomes not interesting anymore. And, my heart's not in it. I want to do it because I enjoy having conversations with these people and do it at a good pace, man. And that's really, for me, it's grown slowly, but it's continued to grow and grow for us. And that's really been the ticket for me, is just to keep it interesting, because I see these guys go into it full throttle. They're doing a podcast every week, or some people are doing more than one now, and then all of a sudden they disappear. And they hit that burnout stage, and it's like anything else. If you saturate yourself with it, it becomes a job, and you already got a job, that you're doing to bring income to your family, then, man, you can burn out very, very quickly. And I see that, So,
yeah.
I'd say what you're doing, keep it going like you want to keep it going. And once you get set up, you make a decision at that point of how you want to go with it. But that's good, man. I enjoy listening to your podcast when y'all out in the blind. And, it's before a hunt that morning. And I've done that myself, man. And it's, back in the day, I've done that with some friends. And it's so cool because you kind of bring that listener in with you, And, yeah, you don't get the quality sound like you do in a studio and all that type of stuff. But you know what? When I'm listening to that stuff, it don't really bother me. I'm just I want to hear the conversation,
Yeah. So those are my favorite podcasts.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I didn't do as many last year is because so many people have run me out of my public land areas that I like to hunt, that we're not having to get to the blind early anymore because we're hunting a lot of private land.
Gotcha.
So we're getting there and it's cracking daylight. And it's like, I don't have time to do a waiting for daylight podcast when it's already daylight. We're not waiting for daylight.
Anymore.
When we were hunting public land, it was like, we got to get there at 4:00, dude. Like we gotta get it. And then it's like an hour we're waiting for daylight. And it's like perfect opportunity to do a podcast as well.
That's
now exactly. Because the videos took off and then everybody wants to hunt where I hunt. I don't have anywhere to hunt anymore.
That's right.
So I got to go hunt private land now. Y'all done run me off of public land.
Yep. You becoming spoiled now. You own your own land now. You have. So we got a comment from a viewer right now, Les Hollister. He says, Teal right around the corner and traveling to Idaho for some mallards in December. Gonna be a great year. Traveling to Idaho. You ever been to Idaho, Nate?
I didn't know Idaho had a lot of mallards. I don't know
much about I would have thought that they don't have a lot of mallards in Idaho, but maybe they do, man. Les, fill us in. If you've been up there before, what's the hunting like? What you know about Idaho, man? I'm sure there's some guys from Louisiana wouldn't mind taking a trip with you if you could fit a couple extra guys in the seat with you. I know me and Nate could clear our schedules, maybe make a trip up there with you. So, but anyway, well, good, man. That's good to see with Fallen Tide. You got some stuff. Obviously, you got a video that you've been holding back. You kind of referenced that a while ago, and you're going to be kicking off a new season with that right before hunting season. You have any teal trips planned from last year? You going back with anybody, or what you got planned for teal season?
I'm sure I'll make my way out west at some point. Not quite. It won't have anything like set in stone yet, but I'm sure I'll make my way out there at some point to hunt with somebody. And then other than that, I'll probably be somewhere along the Mississippi River, somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Us neither. We don't have anything set in stone for teal. So I don't have any great teal spots, to be honest. Growing up, I was in the rice fields all the time. So I kind of took it, for granted back then because we always had rice, fields to hunt. My buddies, their dads formed, all that stuff. So now on this end, and man, you don't have the contacts anymore. Been gone for a long time, So we'll probably end up hooking up, trying a few spots, and just see, maybe make a couple. But if it's 100 damn degrees like it is right now, Nate, be honest with you, it's hard to get fired up for teal when it's that damn hot like it is right now, man. We've been pushing 100 degrees here in Louisiana over the last couple of weeks, man. So I'm hoping we get at least a little cool snap coming up. Now, I did get a report from a friend of mine. He's out in the local area. And those of you who know where we live, obviously, some of the big water areas in the area. He told me, he said he was out there doing some trout lining this week, and he saw about 20 to 30 teal. He said on some big water this week. So that was interesting, I thought, to see that already. It's a little early still.
Yeah, they're going to start making their way down here.
Yeah,
real soon.
Usually when you get, and I actually talked to Mr. Dale about this one time. He told me this, Mr. Dale Bordelon. He said, when you get that first dip in that temperature, when it breaks that you're waking up and, and it's 78, 84 degrees in the morning. He said, you drop a little bit where it starts getting 5 or 6 degrees cooler. He said, that's usually when them teals show up at the end of August, And he said, that's always been the way it's worked that he's seen. So I'm kind of waiting on that right now, and we'll see how it goes. So, well, we talked about the show. We talked about last season. Now some information that we Louisiana's been in the spotlight, and there's no easy way to say this, I guess, over the last week and a half, besides the Delta Waterfowl Expo, and actually something that broke while we were at the show this weekend. It was a hot topic with a lot of people, man. There was an incident that occurred here in Louisiana having to deal with social media and with a local teenager that is not too far from where we are, Nate, and I don't know him personally. I know people who know this particular, individual, and I don't know if you know him, but, most of you listening to the podcast, you've probably heard by now the name Cole Prevost, and he's a local teenager. He's a waterfowl hunter, and he, unfortunately was in a situation where a lot of negativity drawn toward Louisiana, towards waterfowl hunters, and specifically younger waterfowl hunters, for the way that he treated a hunting dog, Nate. And I guess that's the easiest way I could say it. It's really unfortunate, but it's drawn a lot of controversy, man, and a lot of opinions, whether they were support, opinions of support, or opinions of hatred, even death threats. It's going really far with a lot of it. And in this situation, Nate, I'd have to ask you, and we got to talk about it because this is what we do, man.
Yeah.
We kind of talked on whether or not we were going to touch on this topic or not. And, we have to discuss it. It's part of what we do. It's part of, our realm that we're in. But what did you think when you heard the news break of kind of what was going on from the video and all that type of stuff? What were your thoughts?
Well, I'd saw the video. So I think I had the reaction that just about everybody else had, up front. I was like, man, this is ugly. That's the first thing I thought whenever I saw the video, and I felt obviously terrible for the dog. And I didn't understand why somebody would do that, to a dog. And, I've had some time to think about it, and I think everybody else has too. And seeing the outrage from the community, and look, it's not what he did. There's no way to justify it.
No.
There is, and he has to be held accountable for it, because that's the way that things work. But death threats are a little bit far. I think people have gone too far with it at this point, just from what I've seen. And like I said, I'm not trying to take up for the kid for what he did, but at some point there is a limit. And I know people that know him, and I know people that are in his family. I don't know him personally, so I don't know anything about him, but I do know from what I've been told that he was going through a lot of family struggles at the time that took place. And I'm not going to get into his family's business, but from what I understand, there were some things that could have a young teenager have some pent up aggression. He was probably dealing with some things mentally that somebody his age probably doesn't really know how to deal with. And I do also know from talking to people that have seen him around that dog, they say he does care about the dog. It's not something where this is happening all the time. Again, I'm not trying to necessarily justify what he did, because you can't do that to a dog, and he has to be held accountable for that. You know what I mean? He does, but death threats are a little bit too far. And I mean, the only other thing that I'll say about it is, ask yourself, if anybody out there is listening, ask yourself, you in your worst moment, the worst moment you ever had in your life, if there was a camera on you in your worst moment and it projected out to the world, how would you look? Yeah. Your worst moment. Think about your worst moment, the worst thing you've ever done in your life. And now imagine it being videoed and put out there to the world to see. Yeah. Would you be being canceled? Would you be getting death threats? because we've all done things that we're not proud of.
Oh, there's no doubt.
You know,
and I think there's not a person who, whether you've supported him, in some sort of way through this, or you've been the one who's crucified him through this, which I think that, my opinion, I still have a hard time with this situation in the fact that, what he did was 100% wrong, absolutely wrong. Yeah. And you have to have punishment. And I think he's gonna, if he hasn't already been through hell, he's gonna live with this his whole life, because people know who he is. Unfortunately, the situation here is, you asked that question, if you had a camera on you. In this situation, what a lot of people are going to argue is they're going to say, well, they put the camera on themselves in this situation, and they decided to post this, as a group of young hunters. And that's very true. That is very true. That's the thing with social media. Everybody wants to be, they want to get their piece of the pie, I guess you could say, as far as their content out there. And this wasn't the one to do in this situation. Whether or not that camera was on or it was not on, something's deeper there. Like you said, there's issues deeper there, whether it's personal, it's family issues, whatever. You don't know what somebody's been through. And I'm not defending him at all when I say that. What I do look at is from a fatherly perspective. I have a 7 or 16-year-old son that hunts waterfowl, been on his whole life with me. And he has a dog now. He has a lab himself. And I asked myself when I was mad when I saw it, like everybody else. I think any waterfowl hunter who's been around this sport for a long time, I think that your first reaction is just anger, like you pissed off, And I think nowadays a lot of people hop on social media at that point, and then they kind of let it out that way. And some of the people that probably made these death threats, Nate, and these things, they probably went back and either deleted some of these videos that they've put on there by now, or in some form or fashion, they probably regret some of the stuff they said. I'm not going to say all the stuff they said, because some of it's probably accurate information the way they feel, and they have a right to say that for sure. But when I have a son and I look at it that way, if that was my son in that situation, man, my initial reaction, the way I was brought up, is I would beat his ass. I would beat his ass, and he'd get a good ass whipping for it. He
would deserve it too,
and he would deserve it
because no dog should be hit like that. Dogs are far too loyal. They're the most pure souls that are on this planet, in my opinion.
That's exactly right.
There is no circumstances in which you should treat a dog like that.
That's right.
There's nothing, and if you think that that's going to make the dog go get the duck, that tells me that this kid probably had some things going on. Like I said, I don't know definitely what's going on, but I've heard some things, and I think everybody just needs to put this whole thing to bed.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Just
and only time is going to help that, Nate. Only time is going to help that. Because what they don't realize is sometimes the people around the actual people involved in the situation. For instance, I can tell you this, that I know people that know the family or know members of the family, not direct family, but outside the family, cousins, aunts, that type of stuff. And in a situation, there was people calling one of the family members that wasn't even the direct family member, thinking it was the family of Cole and this gentleman in this situation, and had their address, giving them death threats because they had kids too, and wasn't even the correct family.
Yeah, it might be the same people that I know. I know this one kid around the same age who's cousins with him, and he was getting death threats. And I'm like, it's not him. About. It's not him. It's not the same kid, and he's getting death threats.
Same kid.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna lash out in that situation, then it's definitely some do your homework, I guess you could say, and make sure you talking to the right people, I guess I could say. But yeah, man, it's unfortunate that we have to talk about that in this light, because like we talked about earlier in the show, Nate, there's so much good, man, in this community. And, I think that only time's going to heal this young man. I think time's going to heal these other hunters that were involved with him. And to you younger hunters who are out there, and I'm talking as an older waterfowl hunter, a mid-generation guy who's been doing this for a long time, you can learn from this experience. When you turn, I tell my son all the time, I say, when you turn on that camera and you involved in something that you shouldn't be doing, just remember that the world has access to it once it gets posted out there, and, when everybody wants to go out, they have GoPros, they have cell phones, they want to film their hunts, this and that. But just remember, you do something stupid, guys, and it's gonna come to light. If you trust a hunting buddy not to post a video that you shouldn't have been doing something, then I got news for you. Chances are later down the road, it's going to come back to haunt you. So don't put yourself in that situation at all to begin with. That would be my advice as an older hunter, And the same goes for any generation, no matter how old you are. We're out there to capture the good part of the sport, and that's what we want to focus on,
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I think if you're telling anybody about any of these situations, whether it's safety, whether it's like you said, something going on video forever, just remember when you're going out there duck hunting, there's always going to be another hunt. Like if you're getting frustrated because your dog's not going to get the duck, take a deep breath and realize, look, there's going to be another hunt. If we don't get this duck, it's okay. If my dog doesn't pick up this duck, it's okay. If you're going out there and there's a duck swinging across where you're trying to shoot it because y'all ain't shot nothing all day, but you're going to have to go over and swing over on your buddy that's next to you to shoot it, don't take the shot because there's going to be another hunt. Whatever it is, just remember, this is not my last duck hunt. There's going to be another hunt.
Yeah. Yeah, Les Hollis was commenting on the chat. He's saying, I heard he got charged with animal cruelty. And that's probably, I would say that's probably accurate. I don't know 100% if that's what it was. It don't really matter. In this situation, at this point, it probably doesn't matter 100%. But, I think it's an experience that everybody, including him and around him, is going to learn from. There's no doubt about it, So,
yeah, hopefully one day he grows up, changes his ways, the way, and works on some of the things that he's probably dealing with mentally. And maybe he might even be one day in the future a good podcast guest you could talk to, and he could teach some lessons to people. That's what I'm hoping comes out of this situation. As a change.
Yeah, and that's a great point. That's a great point. He may be able to use this situation, Nate, as as a speaking, experience to be able to speak to other people and other hunters, from. And I know you guys that are listening right now, a lot of you are probably saying, F him, and this and that, and you mad, and you have a right to be mad. We're not, like we said, we're not trying to defend them in any way. We're just talking over this subject, the good and the bad of both aspects of it. And there's not a whole lot of good, so we're trying to, touch on, the little bit of positive in the situation that could possibly come out of it. So, but Les is commenting again. He said, and yes, Idaho has lots of mallards. My brother is a form consultant, so he has connections, corn connections. Corn, boy, that old corn comes into play. It's funny how I bet they loaded if they got birds and they got that much corn up in Idaho, they probably loaded Nate with birds up there with mallards. Les, we'll take you up on it, man. You need us to go up there and do some studying on that corn, help your brother-in-law out. We'll definitely take a trip up there with you, man. Hit us up, let us know. Reach out to Nate or myself, and we'll take a trip up there with you. We'll make something happen, man. Go up to Idaho, Nate. What you think? You could break away. The wife won't mind this season. You go to Idaho as well.
We'll see.
Smart man. He answered that very, very, very slowly on that. Well, man, that's all I got, Nate. Man, it's been a blast catching up with you, dude. Dude, we're gonna hook up here eventually, and we're gonna make a trip together. I know we had talked about making a diver hunt at the end of last season, and we never got to because it was kind of right at the end of the season, and we both went our ways at that point. But this year, man, we got to get together and make a hunt and have some fun. Just get together and talk in person, man. I'm sure we got some conversations that we can't talk on camera about. We could maybe talk off camera about.
Yeah. Well, look, last year the only reason we didn't make a diver hunt is because the canvasbacks didn't show up.
That's right.
So,
I remember you told me that. You said, "Hey, they just ain't there. The canvasbacks ain't there." So
they ain't there.
Well, I'm gonna do a little bit of diver scouting this year too. So if I get on something, I'll let you know. And if you get on something, we'll hook up. We'll get together and do it. And we'll go from there with it, man. Blake Benoit Performance Baits. He's a supporter of the podcast, guys. Let's go. Blake came down to the show with us last week, man. He met us up there, and he was trying to sling some fishing baits, Nate. He makes all kind of bass, soft plastics. He's well known for his sac-a-lait baits, man. So when you do those fishing videos, I'm gonna have to put you in contact with Blake Benoit, man. He makes these little grass shrimp, Nate, that are artificial. And talk about some killer little brim and sac-a-lait baits, man. You got to get you some of those in your hand.
I'd like to try them. I saw Blake on video. He got like a mobile tackle store. I said
that dude is the mobile Johnny Moore's Bass Pro Shops on wheels. He's something, man. You talk about hustle, Nate. You think we hustle? But that dude hustles. He's always doing something, man. He
appreciate it.
He works. So good to see you, Blake. Nate, man, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on. And until next time, guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors podcast with our special guest, Nate Verdin from Fallen Tide TV. If you guys enjoyed the podcast and you were streaming it on YouTube or Facebook, give us a thumbs up. We'd appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, then go subscribe, Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors, or check out Nate's channel, Fallen Tide TV. If you're not a subscriber, Nate does a much better job on the video side than I'll ever do, man. I bow down to him, man. He does some great content. So go check him out, Fallen Tide TV. You can find him on all the social media platforms. Not hard to find him, guys. Hit him up, give him a follow, comment on the videos, let him know what you're doing, and he would appreciate it. I promise you he will. So. All right, Nate. Well, we'll let you get back to the wife, man. I'm going to get back. I got some cooking to do tonight, so we'll get back to the wives and keep them happy.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me, buddy.
Hey, you're welcome, brother. Good to see you. Need something, reach out to us.
Yes, sir.